Anderson with Anderson Seed and Garden. Our summer parking lot sale is underway. For a limited time, save big on all kinds of plants and trees. Fruit trees are now 30% off. Anderson's beautiful, colorful hanging baskets are 40% off, and perennials are now 25% off too. Also, get ahead of those nasty grasshoppers with sprays, baits, and repellents. Anderson's has all kinds of options for you to stop them right now. It's also time to apply Hydrotain to make your watering go 30 to 50% farther in this heat. Anderson Seed and Garden, 69 West Center in Logan. Online at andersonseedandgarden.com.
The results for the 2024 Best of Northern Utah contest will be revealed Wednesday, June 26th. This year's contest, presented by the Cater Shop, saw record participation in both votes and businesses nominated. Pick up your own free copy of the Winners Magazine starting June 26th at locations throughout Cache Valley. Pickup locations and winners can also be found at bestofnorthernutah.com. Keep listening as we celebrate the winning businesses in this year's Best of Northern Utah contest.
Best of Northern Utah.
It's time for the Garden Guide with your host, Mark Anderson from Anderson Seed and Garden.
New research suggests that people are more likely to eat vegetables if they have a tempting name.
What would life be without homegrown tomatoes? Only two things that money can't buy, and that's true love and homegrown tomatoes.
From gardening to landscaping.
Today we are going to try and create garden eyebrows. Kind of like the flowers are sprouting directly from your hair. That makes sense.
Go! Phone lines are open at 753-KVNU or 800-369-KVNU.
Kind of like eating vegetables.
It's the Garden Guide, now on KVNU 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to the Garden Guide on this Saturday morning. I'm Will Feelwright, and joined in the studio once again, Mark Anderson from Anderson Seed and Garden, where we talk about all things in your lawn, your garden. We can talk about trees, talk about shrubs, talk about insects, a lot of the things that people are seeing around their home this time of year.
We can even talk about frost.
And we can. What do they say? Mother Nature, you just never know what to expect.
Never know.
Wow.
And, a lot of people have been in the store after our frost on Tuesday talking about it, and they're like, oh, this is like so unusual. And it's like, well, yeah, it is kind of unusual, but 20 years ago, it was my daughter's first birthday, and her birthday is on Flag Day, and we had 3 inches of snow on her first birthday. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, so it's unusual. It's not very often. It's not common that it happens, but to have frost in June, it's not crazy. No, I mean, it is kind of crazy, but.
The one thing to expect is the unexpected, and that's how gardening is. And
that is.
It was definitely a curveball, though. I think for many of us,
and a lot of people prepared for it. They had frost cloths out, and I had suggested to a lot of people, if you get the air to circulate, then the frost doesn't settle. So people put fans out, and just to keep that air motion happening. And so we had some frost in pockets around the valley and other parts untouched. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of how it works.
And I always grew up with the urban legend that if you just try to get a little water out on those plants just before dawn, that oftentimes can help too.
As the water freezes, it releases some energy. And so as it freezes around the plants, it will release energy that keeps the plants inside warmer. Yeah. And so it'll actually protect them. So we had multiple people that turned their sprinklers on at 4 o'clock in the morning just to have some moisture out there.
Get a little moisture
there.
Yeah,
and I think their plants have come through quite well also. Yeah. So there's a lot of tricks to the trade when it comes to trying to protect your plants for a really late frost like this. But it's been 20 years since we've had one, but we definitely did in 2004.
Well, in the old record, we were looking back, was 36 degrees here at the KVNU studio. Right. And so, we dropped another 9 degrees below that.
It happens. No, I guess it was 2005. It was 2005. Okay, 2005. Yeah, because my daughter was born in 2004. So it was 2005 on Flag Day, 3 inches of snow
Wow.
in the valley. So we definitely had frost in parts of the valley that year as well too.
So you're saying we shouldn't complain because I'll take a little frost over having to shovel the
3 inches of
driveway.
snow, yeah.
Yeah.
It did melt off really fast, so it did melt fairly quickly. But we figured that was a birthday that we weren't going to forget for a long time.
No, I'm sure you wouldn't. Well, we've got a lot we want to talk about today with, what to do. If you
Right.
did have some frost damage, how you can be able to quickly recover from that,
Right.
how you can get your plants replaced and then quickly get them started again.
Yeah.
And plus also, here we are now today, expected to be in the 90s. So
yeah.
warming up real
how
quick.
quickly things change.
Yeah.
How quickly things change, and those warm temperatures are great for the plants. It'll help them get growing. And a lot of the ones that have been damaged, like say your potatoes got nipped, potatoes will come back out of it just fine. I've even seen corn get damaged up on the tips with a little bit of frost, and you just kind of trim that off, and then the corn grows more, and you get like new growth. So in a lot of cases, you can trim some of the damaged parts off of your plants, and they will recover, and they'll just put out new growth. In some cases, they might be completely shot. If you had like small beans that were coming up and they got nipped, plenty of time to plant more beans. There's plenty of time. In fact, we planted beans as late as the 20th of July and had them produce very nicely before the end of September. So usually they're about 60 days on like bush beans. So you'd have plenty of time for that. Even corn. I'll be planting some more corn next week because I left some space available in my garden to plant more corn after like the peas and spinach and lettuce and stuff are gone. So there's a lot of space we can recycle. So right now we're picking peas like crazy. Our lettuce is ready to go. Our radishes are already gone. We're starting to pick kohlrabi and spinach. So a lot of our cold crops are in prime season right now. So we're picking peas like crazy, and it won't be long. It'll be the 1st of July. They will be completely done. They'll be gone. So we'll yank those peas out, compost them. Spinach will start going to seed by then, so we'll be done with the spinach. Lettuce will be going to seed by then. So a lot of those early crops, we can remove those the first part of July and then reutilize that space. And so replant some shorter season crops. And if you want to wait, you can even plant some more cold crops the first part of August, so that they'll be coming on in September and October. So we can reuse that space that we're pulling the peas and the spinach and the lettuce and the radishes and stuff out of. So there's plenty of time to plant more carrots and beets. They all take about 75 to 90 days to produce. So plenty of time for carrots and beets. Beans only take 60 days to produce, so you could do bush beans for sure. Pole beans probably even. Pole beans take a little bit longer to produce, but once they start producing, they'll produce until it freezes. So they'll just go and go and go and go. But bush beans, 55 to 60 days, and they're producing already again. And with a lot of varieties of corn, especially the early varieties, if you did sugar buns or Trinity or Ambrosia, a lot of those early varieties of corn, Sweetness, they will produce in about 70 days. And so you plant those on the 1st of July. You'll be picking them by second week of September.
Yeah,
second week of September, you'll be picking that corn. So it's kind of nice to have a later crop of corn coming on. I mean, it's great when it's ready for 4th of July, 24th of July, but come Labor Day, you've got another crop coming on. It's like wonderful, and then it'll just kind of continue until October hits. We've even had corn that we've planted, after the 24th of July, and had it ready the 1st of October, which you just can't beat it.
Yeah. Last year we had to plant our beans late because we had a muskrat who decided that our bean plants were very tasty.
I remember talking about that last year. Yeah, I remember
So
that.
we ended up planting our beans so late that we actually were picking them and harvesting them right up to the snow.
Oh, yeah.
And, so definitely still plenty of time to be able to plant it, especially if you are going to be recycling some of that space from some of those cold crops, beans and other things like that. Great ones to be able to put in there.
To plant in there. And, if you've had some frost damage, don't worry. We still have tomato plants at Anderson's. We still have peppers. We still have squashes and melons and cucumbers. even though you can plant those squashes and melons and cucumbers from seed and still have plenty of time for them to produce. Zucchinis, 45 days. They will produce in 45 days. So if you planted them on July 1st, you could pick them before school starts.
Yeah, mid-August. And then you'll be giving them away to your neighbors by September.
Because they'll just keep producing and producing and producing until it freezes.
Yeah.
So it is definitely not too late to plant a lot of things. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if you wait until about the first or second week of August, you can start replanting all your cold crops as well too. So in August, you can plant more peas, you can plant spinach, you can plant lettuce, you can plant radishes, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli do great. They'll produce in October and even into November with cold temperatures, freezing temperatures, and those plants will still be harvestable and usable. In fact, most of the commercial growers won't plant their cauliflower crops until later in the season. So they'll plant them the end of July, first part of August, so that they will be ready for Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Yeah, so they do a late crop so that they'll have those ready to go for the holidays.
fall.
Yeah, for the fall and holidays. And so all those cool crops, kale, you can plant those the first part of August, and they will be ready to pick in September and October and even into the first part of November. They can handle the cold. They can handle the frost. If it snows, what the heck, doesn't matter. But great way to reuse and recycle some of that space where you've already pulled some of your crops out, and they're like done for the year.
All right.
So good time to do that, and no worries. It's later in the season, but it's not too late to plant any of that stuff.
Especially with the temperatures that we have getting back up into the 90s, that'll help boost that soil temperature. Yep. Now, you mentioned you've got a lot of tomatoes, bell peppers, if you'd lost some of those plants from the frost this past week.
Right.
What else is going to be happening this weekend at Anderson's?
You know, at Anderson's, we've got some great sales going on right now. So our fruit trees are 30% off, so great time to come in and get fruit trees. We just brought another 15 or 20 trees in this weekend, and so we've got some nice new trees to choose from. Brought a few more nectarines and a few more peaches in, so we've got some good ones to choose from. A lot of apples and pears and cherries and plums in stock right now. The only thing we're low on is apricots. Apricots we're getting pretty low on. So fruit trees, 30% off. We have our remaining hanging baskets are 40% off. So we still have some nice looking hanging baskets. If you need to replace one that got damaged or maybe got damaged in the frost, we've got some nice hanging baskets that we can replace those, and you can get those looking good on your porch again. So 40% off on our hanging baskets. And also our perennials, our 1 gallon perennials, they are 25% off. So some good deals going on at Anderson's. We have excellent tomato plants in stock, nice pepper plants, and a lot of vegetables still. A lot of flowers. Still have some wave petunias. We still have a greenhouse full of good-looking plants to add to your garden, make things look nice, kind of jazz things up if you had a little bit of damage this week with the frost or the wind. Good grief, the wind was just crazy.
Yeah.
My poor little ornamental grasses got whipped around like crazy.
Well, and I'm sure everybody's wondering, how's your pumpkin plants doing?
You know, pumpkin plants are doing great. I checked them this morning, and we are almost 15 feet long, and they are 10 to 12 feet wide. And they've got lots of little female blossoms on there. So we are thinking this weekend we're probably going to have a fruit set, and we'll get to pick from 3 or 4 that we're going to try and pollinate. And hopefully by this time next week we'll have a pumpkin that's softball size.
Beginning. Now, when it comes to setting those blossoms, do they recommend that you set it in different areas of the pumpkin plant?
The best place to set those pumpkins, if you're going to try and grow the biggest pumpkin possible, is on the initial first vine. So that initial vine, but you can set them on some of the secondary vines as well too. But they don't have the
circulation.
The circulation, to get the strength that you get out of like your main initial vine. And so we're going to try and set a fruit on that initial vine, and then if we've got a couple on there, we'll try and see which one's growing the fastest, and then we'll keep that one. We'll take all the rest off. And so I've got 2 plants, and you can let Mother Nature pollinate them. You can let the bees pollinate them, and they'll be fine, because there's nothing else in the garden that's got pollen on it that's going to pollinate those plants other than the 2 giant pumpkins that I've got going right now. So none of the zucchinis are open or anything, so I don't have to worry about cross-pollination. But usually what the growers will do is they will see like the female flowers that need to be pollinated and get up like the crack of dawn in the morning, just as the flowers start to open up, and then you can take the pollen from one of the male flowers, you can transfer it over to the female flowers, and then you can control the genetics on your seed so that you know what the parent is for both of them. So then, since I've got 2 plants, I would take the pollen from one of my plants and use it to pollinate the other plant. So then you'd have hopefully get the best genetics from both of those for next year's crop. So you'd be like utilizing the seed from those 2 giant pumpkins to hopefully have a better crop next year. So
see, it's almost like you're a bee.
It's so interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting. My least favorite part is getting up at like 5:30.
The crack of dawn.
5:30 to go out there and pollinate the plants. So, but that's going to happen this week. So we were kind of shooting for around the 20th to the 25th. The way the season has been, it would have been nice if we could have done it a couple weeks ago, but things have just been a little cold, a little slow this year. Yeah, so April was cold and wet. May was cold and wet. June's been kind of a roller coaster. Yeah, we've had some cold and we've had some heat, so it's been a roller coaster. So an unusual growing season this year.
Yeah,
but my peas are awesome. Like the peas are amazing. We've been harvesting kohlrabi. They're really good. Spinach is great. Lettuces are just performing wonderfully, and my onions look outstanding. Look really good. Onions were the pits last year. Like I couldn't get the onions.
To
do
come
anything.
Up.
It's because I couldn't plant them until like late May, just because the
ground
weather.
Was so wet.
Like we had so much snow on the ground. So my onions look fantastic this year.
Well, and we harvested our first batch of rhubarb for Father's Day.
Nice.
Made some rhubarb crisp.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites.
That's great.
So, and my daughter actually did a little research. You knew this probably, I'm sure already. Rhubarb is a vegetable.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yep, it's a vegetable.
So I was like, hey, look at that. I'm healthy. I'm eating healthy for Father's Day.
Eating your vegetables. So
yeah,
very nice. Yeah.
So a lot we can talk about today for the Garden Guide. I know, insects continuing to be. In fact, we ought to probably just put out a public service announcement for every Garden Guide, just telling people spray for grasshoppers.
Yep. Because if you don't, they're just going to continue to populate.
Yeah.
And so we really need to knock them down. So we have some great options at Anderson's with the grasshoppers. In my very own garden, I started off with the repellent because there were lots of little teeny tiny grasshoppers that were just starting to nibble on my beans, starting to nibble on my corn, my potatoes. For some reason, they like the potatoes. They go after the potato leaves. And so I put the repellent out there last week, and it took a day or two, but all of a sudden, the thousands of grasshoppers were tens of grasshoppers. So it just really, really cut their population down to 1% of what I had previously. And so that worked amazing. But we're doing some spraying as well, too, because the grasshoppers are all coming over from our neighbor's field. And so there's just thousands of those little guys. So the repellents work great, especially in the vegetable garden, because not only will it repel the grasshoppers, but it's going to repel other insects as well, too. So we'll keep the grasshopper population down, and we'll prevent like moths and flies from coming in and laying their eggs on the plants. And it's when those eggs hatch, those larvae are starting to nibble on all the plants. They're the ones that do most of the damage. And so the repellent really does a great job at preventing not just grasshoppers, but all kinds of other insects. It's made specifically for mosquitoes, so it really helps with the mosquitoes. I'm afraid we're going to have a big mosquito season this year as well, too, since it has been so wet. So it'll help with the mosquitoes also. So I start with that. And then if I'm spraying around the yard, lawn, shrubs, trees, flowers, any ornamentals, I will use the Bug Blaster from High Yield. So High Yield's Bug Blaster is a little bit more potent. It's a little bit longer lasting, has a really quick knockdown on the grasshoppers. And I usually tell people, hey, when I spray around my vegetable garden, because I don't use it in my vegetable garden, but when I spray around the vegetable garden, I'll start in one spot and work my way around, and then I'll go a little heavy along the property line where all those grasshoppers are coming from. There will be lots of dead carcasses where I started by the time I get around my garden and back to where I started. So it really does a great job at knocking them down, especially when they're small, but it'll kill larger grasshoppers as well too. And the Bug Blaster is a great place to start. If you want to use something that's a little lower toxicity on your vegetables or your fruits, then we'd recommend either the permethrin, like an indoor-outdoor from High Yield. 7 is great also. So the 7 has a very short timetable from when you spray to when you harvest. And so on most plants, it's 24 hours. So if you were to spray your raspberries with it, the limitations on raspberries are 24 hours from when you spray to when you harvest. So usually what we'll tell people is, if you're picking raspberries or strawberries, or you're picking your peas, get in there and harvest what's ready to be picked and then spray afterwards. And then it's usually 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 days or a week before you're picking again. And by then you can just pick things, rinse them off, eat them, and you won't have any problems with any of the insecticide residue being left over on your plants. So they're safe to use that way. So best options would be the indoor-outdoor, which is permethrin, the 7, or the Sayonara. We've had really good results with the Sayonara as well too. So there's a lot of different options to use in your vegetable garden. If you want to stick with organic, then you could use the triple action from Fertilome. That would be excellent as well too. It just has a much shorter residual, so you're going to have to spray it more frequently. Really, it's only going to last about 4 to 5 days, and then you're going to have to spray again. So you'll have to use it more frequently. But if you want an organic option, it's going to be effective, but probably not as effective as say the Bug Blaster or the High Yield Indoor Outdoor or the 7 options.
Okay.
Yeah. So those will be more effective. And then we do have some baits as well too. So even though we can't get Nolo bait, and what people don't understand with the Nolo bait is a couple years ago the factory that manufactured it burnt down, and so they've got it rebuilt, and they're working on producing a whole bunch of different products. But the Nolo bait, since it is a biological spore, they have to culture it. They have to grow it. So the best analogy that I've got is kind of like it's doing your own sourdough starter. And you have to culture it and get it going.
Takes a long
before
time.
Before you can actually produce enough to sell. And so this year they're starting to hopefully culture that Nosema spore, so it'll be ready hopefully for next year. So maybe we'll have Nolo bait back again next year. But so far, no Nolo bait this year. But we do have a bait that's called Niban, and the Niban has been excellent. It's made from boric acid, so it's a naturally occurring material. It is non-toxic to people because you can excrete boron from your body if you have too much. Like say you accidentally consume some, your body will utilize the amount of boron that it needs at the time, and you'll excrete the rest out. With the insects, they can't excrete it out, so it builds up in their tissues, and it becomes toxic to them. It kills them. And so it works great on cockroaches. It works on ants. It works on silverfish. It works on crickets, works on grasshoppers. So it's been very, very effective. And the great thing about the bait is it is weatherproof, and it's also UV resistant. And so it won't go bad with the rainstorm like the Nolo bait used to. Nolo bait, it would get wet. It was worthless.
And then it's gone.
Yeah, it was not good anymore. And with the Niban, it's resistant to rainstorms and sprinklers for probably about 6 to 10 events. So 6 to 10 rainstorms, it would still be holding up. But with the Nolo bait, one rainstorm, it was toast. And then it's UV resistant as well too. So if it's out in the sun, it won't break down the insecticide as well too. So it can resist rainstorms, can resist sunshine. It doesn't have a shelf life like the Nolo bait did. And as soon as the grasshoppers consume it, it will start to kill them, where the Nolo bait would take 4 to sometimes even 6 weeks before it would kill the grasshoppers. So the Niban actually has some benefits to it that the Nolo bait just didn't have at all. So NOLA bait was great. It would help knock down whole generations of grasshoppers, but it was kind of slow.
Okay.
It didn't work quickly, where the Nyban will work a lot faster. So there's some really great options for controlling the grasshoppers. But with the baits, you got to remember, if there is a smorgasbord of plants out there for them to choose from, grass is green and gorgeous. You've got lots of beautiful flowers. You've got some bean plants. You've got some tomato plants. You've got some peppers and some corn. They have all these different plants to choose from. They aren't that attracted to the bait.
Yeah. Doesn't look that great.
It's just not that attractive. And so the bait works best when their food source has dried up. So when the farmer next door cuts the alfalfa and there's no more alfalfa out there for him to eat, then that's when the bait's going to be super attractive to them, because now they have a new food source to eat, where their previous food source is now gone. Yeah. And so that's the time to use it, is when their food source dries up, the grassy field next door is gone, alfalfa gets cut. That's when you want to use the baits, and it's going to be most effective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're hitting the bottom of the hour. We're going to be right back and talk more about some of the things that we're seeing in people's lawns, gardens. We need to talk about trees, a lot of disease right now that you want to treat for, and then talk a little bit about some of the things to look forward to as we continue into the warmer summer months, as you're listening to The Garden Guide here on KVNU.
I'm Bill Walter, KVNU News. As July 4th approaches, Americans find various ways to express patriotism, from displaying flags and attending parades to voting, joining the military, and working to improve their communities. To identify where patriotism thrives in the U.S., Wallet Hub analyzed the states based on 13 key indicators of patriotism. These indicators include military enlistees, veterans, voter turnout in the 2020 presidential election, and AmeriCorps volunteers per capita. In the rankings, Utah placed 19th overall, scoring top marks in volunteer rate, U.S. history or civics education requirement, and volunteer hours per resident. Utah also ranked third in AmeriCorps volunteers per capita. However, Utah ranks 46th in veterans per capita and 48th in Peace Corps volunteers per capita. Neighboring states also performed well. Colorado ranked 6th, Wyoming 11th, Arizona 15th, and Idaho in 20th place. 2 crop-dusting airplanes collided near an airport in southern Idaho, causing them to crash to the ground. The Butte County Sheriff's Office says one pilot was killed. The other suffered life-threatening injuries. The crash was reported early Thursday afternoon near the airport in Arco, about 70 miles west of Idaho Falls. The Sheriff's Office says the NTSB and the FAA were notified about the crash, and the cause is under investigation. The names of the pilots involved have not yet been released. Excessive heat watch in effect for areas around northern Utah for Sunday. Cache Valley not in that heat watch, but it will be hot. High on Saturday in the low 90s. On Sunday, mid-90s with southwest winds 10 to 20 miles an hour. For the latest news, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
From ABC Sports, I'm Chuck Severson. Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals in Edmonton. The Oilers live to fight one more day.
They haven't stopped believing. And this series gets dragged back to South Florida for a winner-take-all Stanley Cup Final Game 7.
The final call on ABC. The Oilers cruise to a Game 6 win over the Panthers 5-1, becoming the first NHL team since 1945 to rally back from down 3-0 to tie a playoff series. Oilers winger Zach Hyman with Emily Kaplan after the game on forcing Game 7.
It feels unbelievable to do it in front of this crowd and to have a chance to win now. It's our first opportunity to win.
Edmonton looking to be the first since 1942 to complete the full comeback and win the Stanley Cup. Game 7 Monday night on ABC. MLB, the Red Sox had won 5 straight entering Friday night visiting the Reds, but Jeimer Candelario would go deep twice off Red Sox starter Cutter Crawford.
And he's got another one, and it's out of here to right field. 3-2 Reds. Second home run of the ball game for Jeimer Candelario.
On WLW, 5-2, the Reds the final. In the Bronx, the Braves had a home run party against the Yankees.
3-2. And he hits one well out to right field. Going back to the wall now. Soto, you ready for that? A two-run homer. Right into the first row for Matt Olson.
On WCNN, one of 3 homers for Atlanta on the day, 8-1, Braves the final. Elsewhere, the Rangers over the Royals 6-2, and the Astros beat the Orioles in a slugfest 14-11. Chuck Sievertson, ABC Sports.
From gardening to landscaping, The Garden Guide with Mark Anderson from Anderson Seed and Garden on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Welcome back to The Garden Guide here on KVNU. Will Feel Right, along with Mark Anderson of Anderson Seed and Garden, as we're talking about all things lawn and garden this hour. And before we get back to more questions and concerns that people have had in their garden, what's going on at Anderson Seed and Garden this weekend?
You know, this weekend we have the greenhouses still have a lot of great plants in there, a good selection of tomatoes and flowers, peppers, even squashes, melons, and cucumbers, and we've just got some new perennials in as well, too. But on sale this weekend, we do have our perennials on sale, so 25% off all of our 1-gallon perennials, and there's some that are just starting to bloom, some that are in bloom, and some that have finished blooming already, and so lots of different perennials to choose from, 25% off on all of our perennials. But we also have our fruit trees on sale, 30% off on our fruit trees. There are apples, there's pears, there's cherries, there's plums, lots of peaches still, which is kind of unusual. Usually we're out of peaches completely by this time of year, but we're getting low on nectarines and apricots. So 30% off on all of our fruit trees. I've got some 5-gallon, some 7-gallon, and also some 10-gallon trees. So I have some bigger trees this year that are all on sale, 30% off. And it's a great time to plant. Even though it's a little bit hotter, it's gotten hot this weekend after a cool down earlier in the week. Still a great time to plant trees and shrubs if you do it correctly. We have planting instructions. We've got a nice planting guide that will walk you through that planting process, whether you're planting perennials or whether you're planting trees or shrubs or even new tomato plants. You can use the principles in our planting guide the same way to plant all those different things. So fruit trees on sale, 30% off. Perennials 25% off, and we do have some really nice looking hanging baskets left still too. So our 12-inch hanging baskets, they are on sale. They're 40% off right now.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, so we're trying to find homes for those. Saw quite a few sad looking hanging baskets this week after the frost.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, it hit a lot of them.
Unfortunately, but we do have some nice hanging baskets and some good flowers to try and replace some of those ones that took a beating this week between the wind and the frost. So just not very nice. Compost tea is rolling still. We are getting low. We're almost out of our 1-gallon containers now. We probably have maybe 30 containers left of 1 gallon. So we're just about out of compost tea containers for the season. And the compost tea we will continue to brew all summer long until right before school starts. It's usually around the 15th or so of August that we run out for the season. So compost tea is flowing vigorously right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so compost tea's going. So lots of good things happening at Anderson Seed and Garden right now.
So trees on sale, hanging baskets on sale, still a lot of tomatoes, peppers. If you lost some of them in the cold temperatures that we had, we were talking in the first segment of the show, broke the record Tuesday morning, hitting 27 degrees outside the KVNU
lowest
studios.
Cold temperature.
Yeah,
on that date
for the 18th. So. Yeah, normally don't see temperatures like that. You know, we had been talking the last couple of weeks that we didn't think that frost was going to be a possibility. But like we said, the one thing about Mother Nature that you can expect is the unexpected. And that's obviously what happened this past week. So.
You know, there's parts of Utah that will see frost every month of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, every month of the year.
Well, and people up in Montpelier, they say, hey, stop your complaining.
Yeah, they're used to it.
Yeah,
they're used to it all the time. So
they said they haven't put their winter coats away yet. So now coming back to trees, you mentioned that fruit trees are on sale right now, 30% off.
Yeah.
I know a lot of diseases are starting to crop up with trees.
For
and
sure.
what's the best way to treat some of those?
So I'm seeing lots of samples of different things happening on trees. So on maples, we're seeing a lot of powdery mildew, especially Norway maples. So either green or red-leafed Norway maples, we're seeing a lot of powdery mildew. Easy to take care of with a systemic fungicide. So usually we like to prevent that from happening. So generally around Mother's Day is when we recommend you do your preventative spray to prevent it from happening. But, of course, in May we had lots of cooler temperatures. We had lots of rain, and we had some warm days, and that's when the mildew really starts to spread. And so as soon as things kind of dried out, first part of June, first part of this month, then the mildew took off like crazy. And so a disease control like liquid systemic fungicide from Fertilome or the F-stop from Fertilome, both of those would be excellent choices to stop that disease from spreading and to prevent it from infecting some of the newer leaves that are coming out. And those are also really good options to prevent anthracnose, which we've seen in maples, especially big-tooth maples. So we see it in big-tooth maples. We see it in all the regular maples. We see it in sycamores, and we also see it in oak. And so anthracnose, not anthrax, but anthracnose, is a disease that will start to do damage right along the veins of the leaves. So it's not along the edges of the leaves, which kind of happens when we have some iron deficiency. You get a little bit of brown crisping on the leaves. That's always along the edges. Anthracnose starts in the middle of the leaf, right along that vein structure. And it will turn that vein structure brown, and eventually it'll spread out and take out the whole leaf. And that disease, very, very aggressive this year. We've seen it in a lot of maples. Haven't seen any in oaks, but it will show up in the oaks a little bit later and also into the sycamores. And so those same disease controls, the F-stop from Fertilome, the liquid systemic fungicide from Fertilome, both of those will do a great job at preventing mildew and stopping anthracnose and preventing it from spreading as well too. So those are our two big diseases that we've seen so far this year. And starting to see gall in locusts. So locusts get an insect in the leaves that's called a gall, and we're seeing leaf miners, which is another insect that gets into birch. So birch trees and elms, we'll see leaf miners in there. And so the gall get into the leaf, and they deform the leaf so it kind of turns into a little ball. So it kind of balls it up, and it turns a different color. It will turn kind of reddish color, and then it'll eventually turn brown. And so the insects are inside the leaf. With the leaf miners on the birch and on the elms, they're also inside the leaf, but they are working between the two layers of the leaf. So there's a tissue that's in between those two layers on the top and the bottom of the leaves. And so the adults come and lay their eggs just underneath the surface of the leaf, and then you get this little caterpillar that develops in there, and it will eat all the tissue between the two layers of the leaf. And you get this kind of puffy brown section on your leaves that look like they've been burnt, but there's actually an insect inside the leaf eating all that green tissue out between the two leaves. And they're difficult to control because they're inside the leaf. Yeah, so if you spray the tree with a regular contact insecticide, it won't do anything to them. It doesn't bother them because they're protected inside the leaves. So you have to use a systemic insecticide. So we'll usually recommend a spray on systemic, kind of like the high yield systemic insecticide. Bayer makes one also that's called Insect Disease and Mite Control. Very, very effective at killing those leaf miners, and also the gall because they're inside the leaves. The spinosad, which is an organic insecticide, actually has a translaminar effect where it'll actually penetrate in through the leaf, so it'll actually kill leaf miners inside the leaves. So if you want to go organic, it does a great job on the leaf miners, on the birch, and on the elms as well too. And spinosad will do a great job also. But usually a systemic insecticide. A drench would be the best way to prevent. We usually recommend that happens in April or May, so it's a little bit late for that. But you could definitely spray the systemic insecticide on to try and get the gall or the leaf miners under control. Seeing a lot of those right now.
Great time to spray. Plus, also a great time to fertilize too. If you did your first fertilization at the beginning of spring, we're coming into a good time to fertilize.
June, 1st of July is a great time to do that second application, whether you're doing raspberries or whether you want to like have good growth on your trees, or if you planted a new tree. Right now is actually a really good time to get a little slow release nitrogen fertilizer out there for trees and shrubs.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
So now moving on from trees to lawns, because a lot of people are seeing dry spots. They're seeing some heat stress.
Oh, yeah.
Meanwhile, some of us are needing to mow the lawn a little bit more often too. Guilty there. There's a lot of things that we need to be doing right now because this is that time of the year where, and I always say, I don't want to mow my lawn too much. You want the lawn to be a little longer right now.
Yeah.
And yet you got to mow it more often too.
There's some best practices that we suggest for mowing and for watering to try and alleviate some of these problems that we're seeing. So we're seeing some stress, absolutely, where the lawns have stressed with the heat coming on. But we're seeing a lot of disease showing up in the lawns as well too. And it's the time of year where we're going to start to see in the next couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, we'll start to see the first insect damage showing up in turf as well too. So it's hard to diagnose those and know exactly which one's happening. But usually, if you really start doing some digging into the soil, you can figure out if it's insects or if it's a disease or if it's just water stress and it just needs a little bit more water. So for mowing practices, this is a great time to transition to start doing more mulching. So we've got a lot of homeowners that are starting to mulch instead of bag their grass. And that's a great way to put some nutrient and some organic matter back into your soil and build your soil back up, because there's a little bit of nitrogen in that green grass clipping. There's a little bit of nitrogen in there. And as it decomposes, it'll put a little bit of organic matter back into your soil. So mulching is a great time to do that right now. And we recommend you mulch until probably a little bit after Labor Day. And then once we get into September, all of a sudden the grass is thicker, it's wetter, and it's really hard to mulch because it's growing so fast in the fall. So then we recommend you start bagging again. And this time of year, depends on the type of grass you've got, but it's really better for bluegrasses to mow them as tall as you can. And so for the most part, we're recommending to our customers somewhere between 3 and 4 inches is where you want to mow. So you want to leave it about as tall and as high as your lawnmower will go. And you're going to have to mow a little bit more frequently because the grass is going to get tall and shaggy faster. But it will help your grass. The way it's tall like that, it will retain more moisture. It will be taller, so it will shade the soil where it's growing, and then the soil will retain the moisture longer as well too. So if you're mowing taller, the grass develops a much deeper root system, so it'll force the roots to go down deeper, looking after more water that's down deeper in the soil. So by mowing as tall as you can through the summertime, you're going to get deeper roots. The soil is going to be shaded, so it won't dry out as fast, and your grass is going to be able to retain more moisture instead of you mowing it all off. It won't have to work as hard to stay green through the summer. So those are 3 things that are going to be really helpful by mowing taller. And if you're struggling to keep your grass damp, we really recommend an application right now of either Hydrotain or Back to Green, because those are soil penetrants. They're going to help your soil absorb and retain moisture better. The Hydrotain will actually pull moisture like dew off the grass, pull that down into the root zone of the grass so it can pick up and utilize that moisture. So both those products will last at least 60 days. The Hydrotain will last 90. So if I put that on in June, it will last until middle part of September. Yeah, at this point. And it's going to absorb and hold moisture like your grass will not be able to. It'll make the soil so it'll absorb and hold about 30 to 40% more moisture than it would normally. So you can cut your water back by 30 to 40%. And it really, really makes a big difference if you're trying to conserve on water, if you've got sprinklers that are broken, if you've got restrictions going on in your community. You can utilize these products to cut your water usage by 30 to really up to 50%. Just by using these products throughout the summertime. And if you're mowing taller, that's going to really help as well too. If you're using a product like Humate, that really helps condition your soil so it can accept and absorb, hold the moisture better as well too. So the humate will help with damaged or stressed locations. The Hydrotain and the Back to Green just makes your water much, much more effective. So if you really feel conscientious and you want to make a difference and utilize less water, these are some inexpensive products that will make your water go 50% farther than what it is. And you can use it on turf, but you can also use it in flower beds. You can use it in vegetable gardens. They are safe to use on all kinds of plants.
Now, if someone's trying to decide between Back to Green, Hydrotain, which would be your pick? If you're only going to do one, would you go the Hydrotain way?
The Hydrotain lasts longer, and so you're going to get more bang for your buck out of it, but it is quite a bit more expensive. The Back to Green, very reasonably priced. It will last a minimum of 60 days, and it has some extra iron in there as well, too. So it's going to really green your lawn up without making it grow out of control. So it's got a super dose of iron in there. So even if you're going to have like a wedding in 2 weeks, you can put the Back to Green on there. It will just give you that deep, deep, dark green for your wedding reception, but not make your grass grow so fast that you're going to have to mow like every other day.
Okay.
But it will make your water go much, much farther than it would otherwise. And when it comes to watering your lawn too, it's that time of year where we're starting to hit 90s. We're starting to get into some hotter temperatures. It's time to adjust your sprinklers. Really, the best way to water is longer periods of time, less frequently. And what we're shooting for is that your turf gets 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water per week. That could be in one watering, it could be in 2 waterings, it could be in 3 waterings, but try not to water every single day. It makes it so that your grass doesn't have to work to get the water,
right.
And so your root system gets very, very shallow.
Doesn't go deep.
It doesn't go deep. And so if we're mowing taller, we want to get those roots to go really deep. And so the way to do that is to force the roots to go after the water that's down deeper. So if you water for longer periods of time, the water is going to penetrate down deeper. And when it's 100 degrees outside in July, it's going to dry out on the surface really quickly. But if the roots are down deeper, they'll go after that water for 2 or 3 or even 4 days after you've made the watering application. So really the best way to water your grass this time of year is twice a week, with delivering about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of water with each application. So if you're watering on like Mondays and Thursdays, if you can deliver a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch of water, and that really depends on how your sprinklers work and how much water volume they're putting out. But normally for like my sprinklers, I have rotary, gear-driven sprinklers. If I have them on 40 to 50 minutes with each zone, they'll put out about 3/4 of an inch of water in 40 to 50 minutes. And so I'll do that twice a week. And when I do that twice a week and I use a product like the Hydrotain or the Back to Green, and I'm mowing a little bit taller, so we're going for that 3 to 4 inches, my grass will stay green all summer long, even when we're hitting the hundreds. Yeah, it just stays green with those 2 waterings a week.
Yeah.
And by using the Hydrotain or the Back to Green, you can eliminate one of your waterings. So if you're doing like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you could eliminate one of those waterings. That's 30%, 33%. You're going to eliminate that and just go to twice a week, and you'll be able to keep your grass as green as it was with the 3 applications.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we've got about 8 minutes left, and we got to tease and mention that coming up at the end of the show, we have a giveaway.
Yes.
And we'll give all the details on that giveaway coming up at the end of the show. But before we get to that, we're talking about grass, and we've said before, if I'm someone and I say, well, I've done the fertilizer and I've cut back my watering and I've adjusted my mowing, and my grass just is not looking as good as my neighbors.
As it should be, yes.
Okay.
I had one of those pictures come in the other day.
Yeah.
They're just like, I fertilized,
I've tried
I put
everything
humate on, and here's my grass, and look at my neighbors over there. They don't do anything to it, and it's just like really green.
Yeah. I think probably one of the first questions you ask is, well, how old is your grass? How long has your grass been in your yard?
Yep. There's a big difference between grass that was planted 20 years ago and grass that was planted last year, because of the unique properties that have been bred into the grass varieties now. They will green up earlier. They will stay green longer. They will resist insects and resist disease, and they'll stay really green even under drought conditions. And so there's just a lot of new qualities that have been bred into some of these newer varieties of grass, and you can't compare a 25-year-old grass with a 2-year-old grass.
Right.
It's just they will never compare well. It just
like,
will never look the same.
It's like us being compared to a teenager, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
They're younger, they're healthier looking.
When you're 50 and you're comparing your athletic ability to an 18-year-old, it's just not quite the same.
Right.
It's just not quite the same. And so, some of these newer varieties of grass, this is a really great time to introduce some new varieties of grass into like an older lawn. It will give you more deeper green color, a lot more disease resistance and insect resistance. But in most cases, we can introduce varieties of grass into your existing turf that utilize a lot less water to stay green. And turf has a lot of really great advantages. And so turf and grass, it has kind of gotten a bad rap the last few years. Of course, we were in drought for quite a while, and so everybody's saying, "Oh, tear your grass out, get rid of your grass. Let's landscape," and that is just fine to do. But if you're taking your lawn out and you're putting rock in there instead, whether it's lava rock or river rock or whatever, that rock retains the heat so much more than turf does, and it doesn't produce any oxygen. It doesn't cool the environment. It makes it hotter. And so turf is very, very beneficial because it filters water. So when we get a big rainstorm and you've got turf out there, it will trap and absorb and pull that water down into the ground. And so you get a recharge of your groundwater. It cools. It keeps soil from eroding away. It traps dust and pollen and other particles that are in the air. It filters all those out, and it keeps us from tracking mud inside.
Yeah.
I mean, grass does so many good things, and it creates oxygen just as much as a tree would. And so turf is very beneficial for our environment, but we need to plant some varieties that are less needy when it comes to water. And there's some things we can do and grass varieties that we can plant that will cut our water back by 30, 40, 50%, maybe even more, but you'll still be able to utilize the turf and the best advantages that it has to offer for our environment, because it really does cool down. There's nothing like going out on a hot, sunny day and you find a nice shady spot where there's a tree and you sit on the grass and it feels 15 degrees cooler than it does anywhere else in the yard. And between the grass and the trees that we plant in our yards, it's going to cause so many cooling effects and protecting effects in the wintertime even as well too, to help keep your house warmer in the wintertime. They really do some great things. But there's some really nice new varieties of grass that will make it so you're watering less, but your grass is staying green and beautiful longer, and you don't have to worry about putting an insecticide on or disease control or a lot of those products that we end up spending a lot of money on. Let's spend the money on putting a new variety of grass in there, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
The easiest way to do that, to start incorporating new turf into your yard, is how?
Usually the best way is if you can aerate first. And so we'll recommend, through the middle of the summer, we want to mow the grass a little bit taller. But if you're going to overseed, you want to mow the grass close right before you seed. So you can mow the grass a little bit closer, broadcast your new seed on there, and then rake it with like a leaf rake. So you just rake it lightly. If you can aerate before that, that's even better. So if you can mow the lawn short, aerate it, then you have all these holes that now there's nothing growing and the seed can fall in. Yeah. So then you rake it lightly and the seed falls down into those holes, and then you've got grass seed that's taking the place of the plugs that you pulled out, so you don't have weeds coming up in there. So if you aerate your lawn a lot and you don't put new grass in there and let the grass seed take its place, all of a sudden you have weeds coming up in the holes. And so after you aerate, it's always a good idea to incorporate some new seed in there, because then you'll get new grass coming up in all those aeration, those core aeration holes. So great time to do that after you've aerated. So between now and really the end of September is the best time of year to plant grass, hands down the best. And I always have people come in 1st of July. I know it's too hot right now. I'm not going to plant my grass until September, but what should I do to prepare? And I'm like, don't wait.
Yeah.
Just plant it
Do it
right
now.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you can get your spot ready to plant Do it right now, because if you plant it the 1st of July, you'll be mowing it before Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the end of September, you'll be going, dang, that grass looks so good. It's like it's been there forever.
Really well established.
Yeah. So don't wait. Now's a good time. If you've got your soil prepped and ready to go, you can plant grass seed right now, and you will be months ahead of waiting until the end of the year, 1st of September to plant. Plant it now, because you can set your sprinklers to go for like 3 minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, 3 times a day. So set them to come on at like 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe 11 or 12 o'clock, and then again in the afternoon, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock. And you just want to keep a little bit of moisture out there, and all of a sudden, grass is going to be coming up like crazy.
Perfect.
Yeah, coming up like crazy. So.
Okay. All right. In the last minute, we've got a giveaway we want to mention.
We do. I have in stock right now some Bare Root butterfly milkweed. If you would like to get a free butterfly milkweed, stop into the store, mention that you heard it on the radio. I have about 10 or 15 plants available. We'd like to give away some free butterfly milkweed. It is a gorgeous plant when it blooms, but remember, it does spread like crazy. It can eventually become invasive, so make sure you have a good spot for it. But butterfly milkweed, we've got some plants in stock right now.
While they last for free.
It's our
Just stop on by.
Our radio giveaway today.
Okay.
So first come, first serve on those. So,
all right.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us. We hope you join us again next week. And if you missed a part of the show, just go to kvnutalk.com.